Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Off the Fence, brought to you in association, of course, with Boylesports, and we have loads coming up for you in this show. This is your weekly go-to jumps review show, essentially, and I'm joined, as always, by Barry Geraghty and Tony Keenan, who have had a good week in terms of the tracker horses. We, of course, put forward tracker horses for you to follow for the season, and we've had a couple of winners, so we'll take them. Quick check-in with the boys before we go any further. As I say, interesting racing, Barry, from the weekend. Were you on track anywhere? Can you give us any nuggets of information? Any shocking revelations for us?
No, I was watching on from a distance. Good weekend's racing. Obviously could have been better, but we'll discuss that in a few minutes.
Absolutely, we will get to that very shortly. But Tony, quick hello to you. How are you over there?
I'm good, yeah. I think this was a weekend to be indoors for most people, so I was sensibly well wrapped up, warm, watching on TV like Barry.
Yeah, and me too. I had a rare weekend at home, for what it's worth, everyone. Very much enjoyed watching the racing from the comfort of my sofa, but of course that didn't include seeing Constitution Hill, which we will kick off with the Fighting Fifth as a discussion point, because Barry, of course, we were so looking forward to seeing Constitution Hill in the rescheduled Fighting Fifth at Sandown alongside Shishkin. Both of those two horses declared non-runs on the morning courtesy of the ground by Nicky Henderson. We all understand kind of his thought process here, but would it be safe to say Nicky never really wanted to go to the rescheduled Fighting Fifth once Newcastle got abandoned? I felt like it was slightly driven by the owner rather than Nicky, and Nicky might have just been happy to go straight to Christmas after all.
No, actually, no. And I'd been talking to Michael Buckley during the week, and he was in two minds, and Nicky wasn't sure, and then Nicky was keen to go, but then obviously the weather prevailed as it did, and it made sense not going there in the end, and I think the result reflected that. You have an 11-year-old not so sleepy beating Love Envy, who to me would be far superior at this stage, but ground would have paid to her chances. She seemed to struggle through the race. Johnny Burke chased her along, but he never really got stuck into her through the race to set her light, because she would set her light. So he chased her along, was probably a little bit deceiving to the public to think he was off the bridle, but yet finished reasonably well or got into a challenging position. But that's because she was behind the bridle. He didn't want to go and stick her from third gear into top gear. She run keen, get involved and get very tired. So it's a difficult one when you're on ground as soft as that. And when you're on a horse like she was on her first run, whereas Not So Sleepy was fit, having had a couple of runs on the flat during the autumn. So no, it would have made a lot of sense for Constitution Hill not to go there with the 2.5 week turnaround for Christmas, and then 4 weeks from there to the International Hurdle at the end of January, with being his next target. We saw what Brave Man's Game ran in the Charlie Hall, then came out quickly for the Betfair. Disappointed there, and then he's on a recovery mission after that. So no, I think it's a very sensible decision to make considering the conditions that were there. So that was him. Shishkin then likewise as well. If he's to make the King George, would he want to have a run over on heavy ground 2.5 weeks beforehand? Not ideal either. So you will recover better from your second run to your third run. You won't recover as well from your first run to your second run because you're not as fit for the first day. So it makes, as I said, makes a lot of sense to have made a sensible decision, really.
Tony, do you have any conflicting views to those of Barry / the Constitution Hill team? Ultimately, do you think we're wrapping these horses up too much in cotton wool to sort of preserve them for March rather than enjoying them as and when we can?
Look, it's not something that majorly bothers me. I'm not sitting at home here saying that Nicky Henderson is some dastardly villain ruining the sport. I do just want to bet on it, and thinking about this kind of stuff too much just clutters up your brain when you're trying to find winners. But I suppose I'm here kind of in a talking head capacity, so I better have something sensible to say, or maybe not so sensible. I think we've had this discussion before. I don't like the way that welfare is used as a term to justify taking these horses out. It's not a welfare issue. Trainers need to watch their language. Plenty of horses thrive on heavy ground. What it is a campaigning issue, which is fair. There's a campaigning choice been made here. The Christmas Hurdle has been given preference over rescheduled Fighting Fifth, and that's probably fair enough. The window is a little bit tight. Like horses can be over raced, you know, like you run a horse at Cheltenham, Aintree, and then go back to a Punchestown and throw a Fairyhouse in there. Like it is very, I don't personally like to see horses over raced like that. There's a line between aggressive campaigning and kind of over racing them, and you know, it can take horses time to come out to get over that. And I think fair play to a horse there like Jonbon this season. Like he's a horse that really hasn't been spared. Like he went Cheltenham, Aintree, Sandown last season, and has ready to run twice this season. So in fairness to him, for people knock him, he turns up a lot and he wins a lot of races. Only seems to get beaten by superstars. Nicky Henderson obviously has a bit of history with stuff like this. Like two of his best horses of recent times, he's probably run them in races maybe he didn't really want to. Like Altior was never the same after the Suriname race. He, I suppose, was getting to the tail end of his career at that point. And Shishkin hasn't been the same after the Energumen race in Ascot. I think that race has kind of found out maybe that Shishkin had a little bit of temperament lurking there. I think he said, he had 6 runs since that. Like I know he's won twice, but really only the Ascot race was when he kind of showed his best. To me, Aintree, the race kind of fell asunder for him. I think the second was the best horse that day. So that's kind of where Nicky Henderson is at. And look, I can see his point of view. Just one final thought. I see our boss there, Matthew Taylor, making a point about historic kind of hurdlers and stuff like that, the Monks Fields and the Istabracks of the world, and maybe we're all biased. Like the time you start following racing and you favour the horses that were around then. Like I used to love the whole Brave Inca, Archibald, Max Joy, Hardy Eustace group of horses. They were the crowd that when I was really getting into the sport. Like they seemed to run a lot. Like maybe it does lessen Constitution's Hill position, I suppose, in the lore of the sport, like where he fits in. You know, maybe he's been ducked and dived a bit with the ground and things like that, but I don't know, do people really care about that? Do owners and trainers care about that? Maybe when we look back in 10-15 years time, is that all forgotten about? But that's maybe something to consider as well.
Yeah, I think like we're all just desperate to see him, aren't we? That's the bottom line, and we'd like the opportunity to see him as much as possible throughout the season. But at the same time, you can completely understand why we didn't see him the weekend just gone, and why he is going to be lightly campaigned. But anyway, we'll have plenty to talk about in regards to Constitution Hill as the weeks go by. Barry, let's continue on, because before we get to the aforementioned Jonbon, let's just give a quick mention to the next Grade 1 on the card, which was of course the Henry VIII Novices Chase. The Patron won that for the Gary Moore team. Great weekend for Gary Moore for starters, but this horse very much a sort of outsider of the field, and JPR1's jumping disappointed again, just letting him down when it really matters. Like, you must be so frustrated if you're a backer of that horse or connected to that horse.
Yeah, JPR1 made a mistake down the back, and he made a mistake at the last, but to me he looked beaten at that stage. I thought the winner was good. I thought David Noonan gave it a brilliant ride, his first Grade 1 winner as well. But Gary Moore's horses, they generally thrive in those conditions, do really well around Sandown during the winter on slow ground, like they're fit and hard. This horse only a 5-year-old, a maiden over hurdles, 3 from 3 over fences, was rated 133 going into this race. And if you watch him after the line, he had his ears pricked. It actually took nothing out of him. So I'd say this is a horse who's definitely on the up. It wasn't a vintage renewal, but at his age profile and to me how he finished, I'd say there's plenty more to come from this fella.
Okay, we're putting a more positive marker next to his name than many, I think, will do from that race. Let's roll on to the big one, which, of course, was, well, the 2 mile chase division. The champion chase division had a big weekend, essentially. The Tingle Creek at Sandown and the Hilly in Ireland. And both the big guns came out and ran and won. Jonbon, obviously, in the Tingle Creek. El Fabiolo in the Hilly. Barry, I shall start with you with this. And we by the way, we put this out to our Twitter fans as well, and I'll get to their responses in due course. But first up, Barry, we've seen Jonbon win a second seasonal start. We've seen El Fabiolo win his seasonal debut. Looking back now, which performance of the two of them impressed you the most?
I would on the 2 performances, I'd have to be more impressed with El Fabiolo. First run back, I thought he settled early on over the first fence, and then with the slow pace he got keen. He didn't jump as well as he can, but jumping is a little bit of an issue. He didn't put in a faultless run when he won the Arkle. He wasn't particularly untidy at the last, so he has a tendency to gallop into his fences, and that slow pace making him keen to me would exaggerate that. He's a better chance of relaxing on a faster pace, and I think he'll concentrate and measure his fences better. But he's still a horse, I think, who has more potential for even what he showed last year. He's a 6-year-old, whereas Jonbon's a 7-year-old. So I think there's a chance for more improvement. Jonbon was very impressive in Cheltenham in the slower chase in his first run back on nice ground. And at Sandown on Saturday, he was careful over the first couple of fences, which were in the straight. He jumped better down the back straight where the better ground is. And again, he was a little bit careful over the last 3. Now, that's not a negative. I wouldn't fault the horse's performance. He won his race, I'd say not in ideal conditions. He's definitely a worthy contender. But Nicky did mention how he had considered going up on trip this season, was where he thought he was going, but then he wins the short chase. Well, he actually won the celebration chase in Sandown at the end of last season as well. So the horse brought him back to 2 mile, having been considered maybe more of a 2 mile option. But he did run well. It was a good performance. Of the 2, I'd be taken more by El Fabiolo, but I thought that Jonbon's performance in Cheltenham back in the short chase was his best performance to date over fences.
Okay, interesting assessment then. Tony, they're both unchanged for the champion chase off the back of what they did this weekend. We know the scoreline between them. Is there did we see anything different from specifically Jonbon this weekend than we knew about him beforehand, or El Fabiolo as well? Have we learnt anything new from these two?
No, I think Barry summed it up pretty well there. To me, Jonbon's 2 best performances over fences have been the Sandown win start of last season and the Cheltenham win. The weekend visually he wasn't as impressive, but the ground is a big part of that. I don't think any of the front 3 jumped brilliantly. Like Edward Stone made quite a bad mistake. I think the railway fences, Hattix de Sobo had his share of mistakes. So, I don't think any of them were really absolutely at their peak. Obviously, Edward Stone got closer to him than he did Cheltenham. He's probably more of a Sandown horse, so I wouldn't knock Jonbon than that. Has he improved? Maybe minimally, but El Fabiolo, as Barry's mentioned, is the year younger. I think it's 10 starts for El Fabiolo and 14 for Jonbon, so El Fabiolo does have massive scope there to improve. But again, I'm not telling you anything that isn't already in the market there. They're 5-2 and kind of even money. You wouldn't expect there to be any changes in them. I kind of was more interested in the horses that ran behind El Fabiolo at Cork, maybe with a view to going forward. Gordon Elliott has done a really good job, I think, with Field Door, getting him back, jumping fences. He looked like he'd gone off the boil a bit last season. The reverted back to hurdles, never probably a great sign halfway through a novice chase season, but he's got him jumping well, both at Naas and at Cork there on Sunday. And I would also say he is yet to me to get his optimum conditions over fences or really over hurdles when he's been in form, which is 2.5 miles. He's looked like he wanted 2.5 miles since he was a juvenile hurdler. So I think as he goes up in trip, there's a bigger performance in him. Mascada ran much better than she did in Clonmel. Although I do think the complete flip-flop in the tactics actually didn't work particularly well with her. They went from extreme hold up to first in the pace. She's kind of been more of a kind of Goldilocks horse based on last season. Somewhere in between seemed to suit her best just right. So maybe settling her in mid-div, riding her a bit less aggressively might work out with her. Jungle Boogie, I suppose, ran alright under kind of a quiet ride. He does look like a horse with a bit of a physical problem. Obviously the trainers have said that. Holds his tail quite awkwardly. And I thought Rebel Gold, although he was last, actually ran okay to a point. Like he kind of went with El Fabiolo as the pace lifted, and trainers seem to be saying that the Dan Moore again is his target in early January. He might have needed the run again yesterday. So plenty of positives from those in behind, but particularly Field Door going up and trip.
So Barry, last question to you in regards to Jonbon and El Fabiolo. Obviously, they're the horses that shape the champion chase for us this season in the 2 mile chase division. But in your opinion and your vast experience specifically in this division, are they real out and out proper 2 mile chasers, like that real fast jumping, sort of fast paced horses, really sort of foot down type jumping where they get from A to B so slickly? I just don't know if either of them tick that box in regards to their jumping. And I want to ask you, could they develop into that, or is this how these two jump now?
Well, I think Jonbon is that, but you just didn't see it on Saturday and the conditions that he was in. He was very good in Cheltenham in his previous start, so I'd be happy with Jonbon, and he's more than reliable. He's quick, he's slick, he's sharp. He is the right type, but probably more trustworthy than El Fabiolo. Has a tendency to make mistakes, as we saw on Saturday, as we saw in the Arkle as well. Now, he does jump well. He's a very big horse with a lot of scope, but just when he gets in tight, he lacks a bit of respect. And you saw him bunny hop the fence. I think it was the first in the straight in Cork. You would have seen a bunny hop the last at Cheltenham as well. So he does have a tendency to rush in, get in a bit close and kind of stumble across them. But he's quick about it, and he was 5 or 6 lengths ahead of Jonbon in the Arkle last year. And I think Jonbon still has that distance to make up.
Okay.
Yeah, in fairness, Fabiolo has made mistakes kind of basically every day he's run. He half won in Leopardstown in the Irish Arkle last season as well, and then at Fairyhouse on debut he was pretty ropey. I actually wonder, could he actually be a Gold Cup horse at some stage? Maybe we'll never get there, but he really likes the strongly run races. I wonder, is there even better to come with him up and trip? Maybe it'll never happen?
Oh, that is a little nugget.
He would be a little bit keen up and trip, judging by him the other day. But you're right, Tony. He does make mistakes. He's probably what we would have called back in the day a survivor.
I like it, a survivor. Right. Well, on that note, we did put out a tweet on the At The Races platform, on the X platform, asking whether our listeners, viewers, fans out there preferred Jonbon or El Fabiolo. Which camp are you in for the champion chase? And we got loads of responses, so thank you very much for your involvement. But I get to give away a free bet because, you know, I steer this good ship. So you're going to get a £20 or euro free bet with Boylesports for getting involved. Thank you very much for that. And who did we choose now, you see? Oh no, you see, I can't even remember who we landed on, guys. And I screenshot it as well.
John Sweeney? No?
Oh, well done, but where is it?
That was right.
Oh, got it. Well done, Tony. John Sweeney. We decided before the show who wins, and we decided on you, John Sweeney. So the At The Races digital team will be in contact with you so that you can get a hold on your free bet. So thank you very much for your contribution. You tweeted to say, I was with El Fabiolo for last season's Arkle, and although Jonbon looks to have improved this season, I agree with you, John, so will El Fabiolo, and barring a fall, he wins the champion chase. So good bit of commitment to El Fabiolo from John, and as I say, the At The Races guys will be in contact with you for your free bet, so congratulations on that. Onwards we go. Tony, I will stick with you just because we're talking about the card, the Hilly card, but we also before that saw the Grade 2 Mares Chase, which has been a race to follow in recent times really, and both the two fancy horses in this disappointed, and it went the way of Silent Approach and a brilliant ride by Danny Mullins. And this horse, I tuned in beforehand and I could hear the racing TV guys talking about this horse as an outsider and the fact she was rated 109 over hurdles, and I thought, oh, poor love, she's got no chance in here. And she goes and wins it.
Yeah, and didn't seem to be any fluke about it. She jumped well. She's jumped really well. Both her chase starts here for, I think Conor O'Keefe is the trainer's name. He's tied in with all these Kilbarry horses. She's not called that because I think she went to another trainer, had been sold, but has come back to them and just looks much improved for fences. And she would have potential again, gone up to 2.5 miles to improve. Harmonia Maker, oh God, she looks a horrible type now in second. I'd say a jockey now wouldn't want to be anywhere near her. She's just does things wrong in her races. I think no matter what direction she's going, she's inclined to jump the other way. So a little bit doing things silly over hurdles as well. So I don't know if I'd want anything to do with her. Now Zenta, to me, travelled very well to the second last, and actually her jumping was excellent. But just a brief glimmer now when Mark Walsh threatened to take out the whip, and I thought she cocked the jaw a little bit. So that might be something to monitor. Maybe it was the ground or good runs last season in the Triumph. Kind of and winning the entry, but kind of on nice ground, maybe getting back to sound surface might suit her. But no, I just didn't love now the way she went when she had to go about and win a race. Okay,
but no fluke about the winner. We'll, I think it's easy to look at that and think, oh yeah, maybe it was just a one-off, but hopefully not, especially for connections, because it seems like such a nice story. Barry, over to you. If we're talking about novice chasers, we also got to see Stay Away Fay in action at Sandown, and once again getting up where it mattered most, but he doesn't half make quite heavy work of it, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think that's very much his racing style, and you saw that when he won previously at Exeter. He beat Grey Dawning. He came up out of Harry Cobden's hands at the last when he looked under proper pressure. But to me, that was a good reflection of having plenty in the tank. He had to do the donkey work on Saturday, and I'd say he got a little bit bored out there in front. Van Anko came up to challenge, looked a big threat, but the further they went, the more reassured you were getting of the verdict. I think he's a very good horse, proper stayer. I know that Paul is committing very much to the Brown advisory. He doesn't want to give any heed to the National Hunt Chase. He would stay every yard of the National Hunt Chase, but maybe at this age he doesn't want to send him over that trip. But I think he's a real contender as a staying novice. I just love the way he measures his fences really well, has great scope. Just, to me, he's a real smart chaser.
Oh, very positive. All right. Well, if viewers and listeners out there are as positive on Stay Away Fay as Barry Geraghty is, then we've got a treat for you, because it's the first of our price boosts for that race, the Brown Advisory. Stay Away Fay has been boosted out to 6-1 with Boylesports for the Brown Advisory at the Cheltenham Festival from 5-1. He's a general 5-1 chance, 5-1 favourite for the race, but you can get 6-1 with Boylesports. But you do that's for a limited time only, and you do need to read the T's and C's for that price boost in the show's description below. But please avail of it if you so wish. That's Stay Away Fay in the Brown Advisory. The first of 3 price boosts we've got for you is now 6-1. So if you were, as I say, as impressed as Barry, get stuck in. Tony, back over to you, because let's talk about Navan on Saturday. Obviously most of the English eyes anyway will have been on Sandown and the action over here, but you had a good card at Navan and some nice performances, and Indiana Dream for the Mullins JP Axis won the beginner's chase. Now this horse very much in the unknown category, but that was a hot enough beginner's chase, and he readily bolted up essentially. And given his profile, I don't really know where he's come from or what he might do in the future. Is he worth getting excited about?
Yeah, you can definitely get excited with him. I'd say keeping him sound will be the biggest issue. He's only had the one run for Willie Mullins before that. Again, very impressive winner of a maiden hurdle at Fairyhouse last New Year's Day. Has mentioned training problems since, but he was really impressive here. Now, there were a couple of jumping mistakes, which would quite serious ones, which would be a concern. And I do think he was probably flattered by the distance he beat Saint Felician. I'm not sure that horse quite got home over 2.5. You might see him back over 2 miles the next day. I do think Hidden Valley Lake is one to kind of keep in mind. He had jumped reasonably well until he came down 3 out. That certainly wasn't coming based on what you'd seen up to that point, and he hadn't been asked for any real effort at that stage. He'd be kind of a strong stayer at 2.5. I think we would have found out a little bit more if he'd have stood up, but definitely promising from the McManus horse if he can be kept in one piece.
Okay, interesting note in regards to the sort of time off he's had, and yeah, that factor of if they can keep him in one piece, because apparently he's an absolute beast of a horse, you know, frame wise, so that can come with its own issues as well, as we well know. Tony, I will stick with you because one of your tracker horses bolted in Slade Steel, who won the Grade 2 Novices hurdle for the de Bromhead Blackmore team, and again another one of our price boosts. This horse has been boosted for the Ballymore Novices hurdle from 14-1 with Boylesports all the way out to 18-1. So if you were impressed, that is the next of our price boost for you. But Tony, a horse that you've obviously wanted to keep on side, and he's beaten all the right horses here in 2nd, 3rd and 4th, really. No, second, yeah, well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, he did have the 3 kind of fancied horses behind him. I don't know what to make of the form. It's a very steadily run race. Henry de Bromhead saying after to be better on nice ground. I think he'll need to be better on nice ground to be competitive in races like a Ballymore, but he might well be. I thought with the steady pace it wouldn't have suited the 2 Gordon Elliott horses, Stellar Story and Better Days Ahead, so it kind of left it to Slade Steel and Lecky Watson. Now, I thought Paul Townend was good on Lecky Watson. He's a little bit of a monkey. He doesn't jump particularly well. He was kind of gradually asking him for effort, and he nearly got it done. But I think Slade Steel was just a superior horse. But to me, Lecky Watson would hold the form down a little bit. Like, would he even have been? I know he ran quite well in the Champion Bumper, but would he really been in the top 5 Mullins Bumper horse the last season, even in the top 8? I don't know. So Slade Steel would need to progress, you would think, if he's going to make it at Grade 1 level. But Henry de Bromhead isn't really a bumper trainer, so there probably is that progression, and again, at the better ground might be a help.
Okay, like I say, boosted to 18-1 for the Ballymore Novices hurdle, which has some pretty nice types, as you would expect, near the top of the market. Tony, one last word on Navan to you, because it was a very good weekend, but specifically meeting at Navan for Gordon Elliott, plenty of winners, and I mean, it's continued really from into Sunday as well, but your focus is on Navan with those 4 winners, was it, on the day, on Saturday? Is that right?
It was, yeah. 4 winners, all quite similar profiles. Every one of them having their second start kind of the season, and this does seem to be a thing. I think we mentioned this, I think might have been the first show, but they may be showing improvement from first to second run. They certainly seem to be doing that. No Time to Wait, his maiden hurdle winner on Sunday, was another one of these, having their second start at 1. So that may be something even to still keep in mind coming up to Christmas. You do wonder, is something similar going to happen with Willie Mullins? They've been still a little bit in and out, like a couple of horses ran very kind of ordinary races at Cork yesterday, like Western Diego in particular, very disappointing again, probably again not the most likeable horse, very headstrong, given a bit of difficulty there in the preliminaries. Like I think we thought maybe with the ground been soft, and it really has been soft, like persistent rain there for weeks. Would the Mullins horse be a bit more forward? I don't think they have been, but is that burst going to come now on their second start, that these horses maybe are getting beaten in maiden hurdles, and some of them have been well beaten, take a big jump and then win? And I do think Paul Townend in some cases, he's riding, you know, where he went on Western Diego, but he's riding a little bit defensively. I sort of think sometimes when the Mullins are really flying, he'll just go out and grab the race by the scruff of the neck and make all, and nothing's getting past him. I think he's more inclined to seemingly take a lead on some of these horses in maiden hurdles anyway at the moment, so maybe there is that lingering fitness concern.
Okay, yeah, interesting. And that's that about those Gordon Elliott horses, all, well, 4 Saturday and 1 Sunday, all winning on their second start. Barry, let's move over to you just to cover a few horses we don't want to forget in the UK, including Deafening Silence for Dan Skelton, who's sort of continuing his progression, won the graded race at Sandown, and yeah, just developing into quite a nice individual.
Yeah, and would look a real good staying potential. He's a 6-year-old too, and the second horse Insurrection was a 6-year-old as well. It was well fancied. Obviously ground was hard work in Sandown, but I could see him potentially shaping up into an Albert Bartlett type, as he seemed to stay really well. Conditions played to his strengths. He's got the age profile. He's only his third start, so there's still a chance for more improvement. And the way they rode him, they dropped him in, they rode him in hope for me to run well, and he did obviously. So I'd say he's a horse who probably doesn't maybe excite him as much at home, which can be a more reliable type for a race like the Albert Bartlett. So he could be a fellow who could improve to that level.
Okay, keep an eye on him. And up at Aintree, we got to see the Beecher Chase and Chambard win it for Lucy Turner and Venetia Williams. And with Coco Beach back in second, honourable mention to him in those conditions off top weight. What a legend he is. But for Lucy Turner, she looked like she had such a great time, I thought, in the Beecher and jumping around those national fences on a horse like that. I mean, that's what dreams are made of, isn't it, for someone like Lucy?
Oh, absolutely. First female rider to win the Beecher Chase, gave it a great ride, jumped like a stag, won really well. So you could see in her interview after the race, you know, the buzz that she got out of it. So it was a great day for her. But as regards what the race does for the future, I'm not so sure. The winner's an 11-year-old. Would it have the class you'd need to win a national? Coco Beach was 13 lengths behind him. He pulled up in last year's Grand National. He was beaten 60 lengths in the previous one. So it probably wasn't the strongest renewal as regards a trial for the Aintree Grand National itself. But a brilliant result for Lucy and for Venetia.
Yeah, absolutely. And they both seem to get such a thrill out of it. Both interviews on ITV. Yeah, delighted. That was a feel good winner from Saturday. Now, before we get on to the preview part of the show, because of course we have the Cheltenham meeting to look ahead to, news just came in kind of literally 30 minutes or so before we recorded this on Monday night, guys, about the BHA's plans, or the discussion the BHA are having around limiting the number of runners a trainer can have in a race to a maximum of 4 per race from 1 yard. This is just a short article that's come out that basically they're floating the idea to their stakeholders essentially. But Barry, just thought we'd throw it out there as we got the news before we recorded. I mean, it's something that has been discussed among media types of people in a more general discussion, but I must admit for myself personally, it's something I never thought would come into play.
Yeah, no, it was mentioned, but I suppose especially with the fact that the limit of the Grand National is reduced to 34. 23 of the top 34 in the Grand National last year were Irish runners, so that would leave a small pool for the UK runners if you were to go like for like. Of the 40, Willie Mullins had 5 and Gordon Elliott had 5. Now 4 of Gordon's would have made the top 34, were all of Willie's 5. So it's I can see where they're coming from, because there could be a little bit of a whitewash of Irish runners and not so competitive for the British contingent. But how it's going to be dealt with, I'm not so sure. But it's obviously a warning shot of what they're thinking of.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's come as a bit of a surprise to me, Tony. But I mean, in and around the national, let's say, just using that as a discussion, as a sort of example for the discussion. Imagine if it comes into play and Gordon's got 7 to run in it and he has to prioritise 4. I don't know, it's a hell of a conversation to be having with owners.
Yeah, well, hello there, Mr. O'Leary. I'm trying to think your horse maybe isn't in the top 4. I don't know what the response to that would be. And then it's, hello there, Mr. Syndicate Manager, whose horse cost 20 grand but has improved a lot this season, and has, you know, it's a very awkward conversation there. We may as well kind of call it what it is. Like, it is mainly an anti-Gordon Elliott thing, because he's the person that's going to be far and away kind of most impacted by this over jumps. Like, he's the one who does a lot of those staying chasers. Like, it is going to be the top handicaps. I'm kind of surprised at the number, really. Like, 4 seems a very low number. Like, if you told me 6, what is it? Maybe that'd be more kind of realistic. But yeah, I have to say, you two seem to have been of a sense that this was coming. I was very surprised at this. To see it come out this evening. And look, does it bring in things where if owners are saying, well, I'm not going to be in the top 4, I might be thinking of moving my horse, I might be thinking of sending it to some type of satellite yard. So a lot of kind of unintended consequences there that maybe need to be thought through. But I suppose if the national is the race they have in mind, and it would make sense that it is, they would need to be getting that rule change out there at this time. Like, it really isn't that long away, and the weights will be out before you know it.
Yeah, I mean, look, all we've got is that Racing Post article. That's pretty limited information. It's obviously just a discussion that's being had at this point. But the fact that the discussion is being had, yeah, will come as a shock, I'm sure. And it has come as a shock to me. Let's move on, preview part of our show, because we have not a vintage weekend of racing, but of course we have the festive period just around the corner. So that is what we will be gearing up to on next week's episode of Off the Fence, with all that racing at Kempton, Leopardstown, etc., etc. But in the meantime, we have a 2-day Cheltenham meeting, Barry, to focus in on, and we've got the December Gold Cup on Saturday. Paul Nicholls saying today that Montmoral will be ridden by Harry Cobden, and Il Ridoto, who ran so well there just a few weeks back, will be ridden by Bryony Frost. So that's interesting. And Thunder Rock is up at the top of the market. Was there anything at this stage that you think is going to run that has jumped out at you, Barry?
Well, Il Ridoto was the one I was looking at, and obviously with Harry riding Montmoral. Montmoral is a horse who has promised the world, for me anyway, and has never delivered on his potential. So I really struggled to see how this is going to be his day, but maybe it will be. Paul Nicholls knows far more about getting one ready to win in Cheltenham than I do. Thunder Rock, the only concern I have about him is he beat Malheur Mission over 2.5 mile in Carlisle. Obviously Malheur Mission franked that form with his run in the old Hennessy at Newbury, but that was over 2.5 mile. I wouldn't have fancied Malheur Mission at that trip. So Thunder Rock, I think he is a good horse, had some nice form from last spring, but is he streets ahead of the field? I'm not certain. Il Ridoto was the one I was going for, and I think I will stick with him because I wouldn't have any much faith in Montmoral. It looks a competitive race. Outside of that, plenty of chances. Fugitive would have a squeak as well. He was 4th in the race in November behind Stage Star as well, so he's not without a chance, but it's competitive. But I'll stick with Il Ridoto and hope Harry's wrong.
Well, Barry Geraghty, Christmas has come early for you, because Il Ridoto is the 3rd of our price boost for you. You can back him at 7-1 with Boylesports for the December Gold Cup. He's around about a 6-1 chance. Elsewhere, it's been boosted 1 point out to 7-1. And as I said earlier, that is for a limited time only with these price boosts. And Barry, you must read the T's and C's, please. But get stuck in, because Il Ridoto is your Christmas present from Boylesports at 7-1. We should also give a mention to the cross-country chase, because the likes of Galvin, Conflated and Manila Indo all have cross-country chase entries. Manila Indo would be the fascinating angle in here, wouldn't it?
Well, he would, but Manila Indo is, he's probably gone past his best, so it's not a surprise to see him line up here. But Conflated, for me, is still competitive. at the a Grade 1 level. And yet he's in here as well. So I see Fury Road as an entry too. So Conflate will be the one of most interest to me. And it was mentioned after his Down Royal run that he could go for the cross country, but I thought it was only smoke, to be honest. But the one then that would interest me further down the weights would be Geshgiel. Obviously winner of the Sefton Chase, loves this kind of trip, loves this kind of ground. Plenty of experience over these types of fences in France, been around Aintree as a dab hand at that. Would look to be nicely weighted here. So Geshgiel would be the one I'd be of most interested. But as I say, it's just interesting to see Conflated with an entry here.
Okay, and anything else to mention from Cheltenham, Barry, before we move on to tracker time?
Yeah, there's a nice novice chase on Friday. Hermes Allen has an entry, but Paul Nicholl says he won't go there. He's going to run Ginny's Delight, who was a winner at the last meeting. But a horse called Crebley fell at the second last behind Ginny's Delight, and to me looked like the likely winner. Was given Ginny's Delight £1 that day and will be getting £5, I think, on Friday. So I would be interested in Crebley in the novice chase on Friday. Grey Dawning is also in there as well, but he has to give, I think it's £8 to Crebley. So he put in a smart performance and head up, but Crebley could be the one of interest.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That just means, well, this show has flown by, guys. It just means that we have a small section of time for tracker time. Tony, I will come to you first because the pressure is on. We've had 2 tracker winners from you already this season. So go on, give us another to put in our tracker, please.
Yeah, I think Stevie Wonder would have found those. But anyway, I actually thought that last weekend wasn't the greatest now for tracker horse, and I was kind of tempted to go back to Fairy House the week before, but I will stick to the game plan here and keep it in the last 7 days. I think I'm going with a horse from the same race as Barry, horse called The Dawn, trained by Liam Burke. He ran in the second maiden hurdle at Cork on Sunday. He finished, I think, 6th or 7th. Had kind of shown up reasonably well in a Cork maiden hurdle at the previous meeting in November, kind of out the back, kind of free going sort, made a move into it, and he did kind of quite similar on Sunday, kind of was dropped out last, made a move out of the back straight very smoothly, probably made up his ground a little bit too quickly, then mistake 3 out, and then flattened out after that. He's going to be one for low grade handicaps. He needs another run for a mark, but he has the kind of run style of one that would be suitably going into a handicap and kind of a bigger field around 2 miles where he can get a bit of cover, and hopefully there should be a race in him as long as the handicapper isn't too harsh. Okay,
and was that same race as you, Barry, but you've taken someone else?
I've taken the third horse, Old Port. 90 rated on the flat. He was beaten 5 lengths and 8 lengths in a couple of good competitive flat handicaps in his last few starts. This was his first one over hurdles. Looked to jump really well. Best form on the flat would have been on better ground. So I think it'll be interesting to see where he goes next. But I'd imagine better ground in the spring will be ideal for him.
Okay, ideal. Into the tracker they go. Thank you very much, boys. As always, thank you very much, listeners and viewers out there. Those 3 price boosts for you are available for a limited time only with Boylesports, so do enjoy them if you so wish, but do it responsibly, of course. And we will be back on, well, next week, where, of course, like I said earlier, we're going to have so much to get through in terms of the looking ahead section of the show, because we will be covering all the Christmas racing, or the best of it anyway. So stay tuned for that, but for now, thank you very much for watching. That was Off the Fence, brought to you in association with Boylesports.